Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Wednesday, which means every Wednesday, compliments and courtesy of Vic Health, we look at sport differently. Doing sport differently is the theme. It's the brand. It's the idea. And today, I'm really excited to be joined by Richelle Olsen from Escaping Your Comfort Zone. Richelle, welcome to the Sports Community live stream.
Hey, Steve. Thank you. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, I can't wait to have you retell your story. So take us, Escaping Your Comfort Zone. What is it and why did you start it?
Okay. So Escaping Your Comfort Zone is body positive hiking and adventures for women and for non-binary people. Basically, what we've found is that there's this understanding that in order to be adventurous, in order to be a hiker, in order to be outdoorsy, you have to look a certain way. You have to be slim. You have to be super fit. You need to be able to go a long way and you need to be able to go fast because that's what we see. I actually did a Google image search yesterday to just see what the images looked like. Of the first 100 images that I saw when I entered hiker, there was not a single person that didn't fit that. So basically there was no one in bigger bodies. There was no one of varied abilities. It was basically super fit, young, skinny, fit people. And so I basically wanted to kind of tell the world that it doesn't matter what size you are. It doesn't matter what pace you are. The outdoors don't care about any of that. It doesn't care whether you're fit or not, you're welcome in the outdoors. And that's what I wanted to, that's the message that I wanted to give people, that you can come into the outdoors in the body you're in. So yeah, basically it started with me putting up a post. I'd done a lot of adventure in my life, and I'd just come off a off-road cycling adventure from Canada to Mexico. And I came back and I went, I don't want to be a business analyst anymore. I reckon there's a way. I reckon there's a way that I can show people how to adventure, and particularly for those people who don't think adventure's for them. That's where I go, come on, let's get out and play. So, yeah.
I had a little bit of a different experience, except with a car, not a bike. Came back from America, road trip from Nashville to New Orleans, and then from Miami down to Florida Keys and up to Orlando. Came back and threw in a 20-year career at financial services. So I'm hearing you. So okay, so then how did Escaping Your Comfort Zone, so how did that come about? And more importantly, what are the options that you've creating now for people to participate in the outdoors?
Yeah. So it came about when basically I decided to put up a hiking event that I put it up on Facebook, and I said, I didn't know what Escaping Your Comfort Zone looked like at this point, but I put up a hiking event that said, hiking for plus size women, Listerfield, 2 p.m. Saturday afternoon. I remember sitting in my car at about 1:45 going, no one's going to show up. Like, no one's going to be here. What am I doing? And suddenly we had 15 people show up. And I think there was 12 of them that totally strangers to each other, total strangers to me. They showed up and we went for an awesome hike around Listerfield. And from that point, it kind of snowballed, and more people came, more and more people wanted to be involved. And my intention at that time, as it grew, was I was originally advertising it for plus size women. But what I wanted to do is, I hate labels. I hate labeling people, and labeling people based on a size is terrible. However, at that point, people said to me, when I saw those words, I knew it was for me. Yes. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to be able to create images and photos and videos that actually showed lots of different body types. So people could look at these images and go, oh, that person has a body type that's similar to mine and she's giving it a crack. How about, maybe I could give it a go as well. So the plus size has dropped off, and it's now just body positive, because we do welcome all bodies. To be honest, the majority of our participants are in bigger bodies. But we welcome all bodies as long as you come with the attitude of being body positive. And so now we run hikes when it's not COVID. We run hikes. Our hikes are run by a team of about 30 volunteer leaders.
Wow.
There's 8 to 10 hikes across Victoria each week. And we also have a small group in Canberra as well. But it's mainly based around Melbourne Metro and kind of the areas around there. And most of our hikes are aimed at beginners. They're no more than 6 kilometres, take no more than 2 hours, and our leaders always lead from the back, so nobody ever feels like they're left behind.
Yeah, fantastic. As we've been going through the Doing Sport Differently theme, and I get this is week 6, so we're only relatively new in this concept of exploring sports differently. But one of the things that's continually coming out is that the imagery and the videos have got to be written in such a way that the target audience can see themselves doing it. They can relate to it specifically, and they can see themselves going, yeah, as you say, that's me. And I think I'd be okay there. I'd be safe there. The other thing that's
agree. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
And in that vein as well is, I think it's quite important to show awkwardness, like, for want of a better term. Like, say for instance, we've got some footage of a trip that we did up at Mount Buller, and it involves crossing a small river on stones, and the footage of like some of the participants in the group being really awkward about going, oh, I don't know where to put my foot, rather than showing the perfection. It's showing the real.
Yeah. And it's okay to be real.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the other big things, and I still haven't put the video together yet, but there's some footage there that we want to celebrate the huff and puff.
Yeah.
A woman said to me once on a hike, she said, I really like this group. She said, when I hike with my husband, I'm always trying to pretend that I'm not huffing and puffing, because I don't want him to see how unfit I am. So the more I try not to huff and puff, the more I huff and puff, and the more anxious I get, and I really, really don't enjoy it. Whereas she said, I look around at everyone here, everyone just walked up that hill and they are all huffing and puffing and everyone's fine about it. I'm like, yes, I'm all about the huff and puff. Like, why do we have to try and like pretend to that we're not huffing and puffing when it's a human thing to do?
Yeah. I've my COVID thing is to run 5Ks every day and on a running track, so dead flat, and the huffing and puffing is something I can relate to unbelievably. And the stopping and trying to breathe thing too. Well, so we got at least 9 online at the moment. So thanks very much for joining us in the live stream. So if you've got any questions for the Richelle as we go through, love for you to ask those questions in the comments. And I guess the other thing that's come out of the Doing Sport Differently theme, which me as a person who's always been in sports clubs from as long as I can actually physically remember, it's my job to walk into sports clubs. I'm starting to understand that it's a really big deal for some people to go from not doing anything to even taking that very first step on the walking track. And this is something I'd never really understood until the last 4 or 5 weeks, to be honest. Is that the experience that you've had with escaping your comfort zone?
For sure. From the start, we've had people say to us that they've come along to a walk, but they've sat in the car and haven't gotten out because they haven't been able to bring themselves to get out. Whether that's because of anxiety, whether that's fear of judgment, whether that is concerns about their appearance, whether it might be concerns about, one of the big concerns is, will I even make it? And that's one of the things, and that's been kind of the thread throughout our group is trying to work out a way to make people comfortable enough to show up to that first event. I know myself, so a little bit like you, I've come from, in terms of adventure, I'm pretty comfortable in it. But for instance, for me, I signed up to a burlesque, an 8-week burlesque class, and it really scared me. And I remember getting to that first class and I sat in the car and I just went, I'm not going in.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Richelle, you're 41 years old. Get out of the car. What is wrong with you? No, they're all going to know how to dance and they're all going to have perfect bodies and I'm not going to fit in, da, da, da. And I literally slapped myself across the face and said, Richelle, you run escaping your comfort zone. You are telling people that this stuff is okay. You need to lead by example. And I'm just like, and I finally, like, I got all teary and then I'm like, right. And I went in. And I realized that there was all different body types and all different people who were able to move, who weren't able to move. And it was great. And I had a great experience. But so I can really relate to that feeling. So one of the big things that we work on doing is nurturing people up to that point where they do show up. There's a number of steps there, but by and large, our most important resource is we have a private Facebook group. So it's Body Positive Hiking Melbourne. And I think there's like 1,600 people in it at the moment. And what we do in that group is, yes, we share our hikes. Yes, we share our photos. But we also do things like non-hiking, less scary things. Like, for instance, at the moment, I mean, COVID is a really great example of this, where we keep people engaged and have them link up with each other via doing things like, at the moment, everyone's posting all the yellow flowers that they can find this week. And then others comment on that, and then someone else comments on that. Then you have things like, for instance, what I did, and as I said, yeah, COVID's a really great example of this, is I put a post up about the importance of mental health and being able to talk to someone, being able to talk to a professional. And so as part of that post, I talked about my experience with speaking to a psychologist and why I went and all the barriers that I faced. But then that opens up really vulnerable conversations from other people going, this was my experience. And then other people see that and they go, oh, hang on. Oh, those people have tried that. Okay, maybe this is something I can do. But it opens up a vulnerability. And within this group, people really get to know each other as people, not as hikers, not as experienced hikers, not as capable. They get to know each other as people. Another great post that went up a couple of years back was, it was a 40-degree day, and someone had posted. I shared a link from somewhere else about an article where a woman who was in a bigger body had said, in the last 20 years, I haven't not worn a cardigan on a hot day, but today I'm taking my cardigan off and I've just got my singlet top on and I'm feeling really brave because I've got my arms out.
Yeah.
And there was literally hundreds of posts with all these people with their arms out on this hot day. And for some people that came naturally, but for some people, they also hadn't done it for 20, 30 years as well. And so that kind of bonding experience and the creation of that group, where there's no expectation that if you're in this group that you will go hiking. Of those 1,500 people, we've probably had about 600 or 700 of them come hiking. So about half, but there's half in there that haven't been hiking yet. And what we realize that when we do ask the people who do start to come hiking with us, how long have you been in the group? Sometimes it might be 2 or 3 years. They've been watching on and waiting for that right time where they feel comfortable enough to come join.
And I just I don't want to skip over this because particularly for those of us that have been in sport for a long period of time, the thought that going from the car to the sporting facility, it is so foreign. But what we now understand, firstly through the research that La Trobe Uni and Vic Health have done, and now through the storytelling of the clubs coming in that doing sport differently program, is that it's a tremendous barrier. And so it's really, if we can, but that's all it is it's just a barrier. So how do you remove that barrier? How do you make it really comfortable for the person to have the confidence, even though they might be really anxious or even terrified, driving into the car park and turning the key off? Well, we don't do that. We press the button and then we slam the door and we walk confidently over. How do you get them to that stage? What are those steps?
Yeah, another one of the things that we do is, so we have small groups. So our groups are no more than 12. And we do that for a number of reasons. First of all is because it makes for a much nicer experience when you're with a small group. The leader can still give each person a personalised attention. And also, we don't want to be one of those big groups of 30 on the trails that you might come across. But in saying that, when a leader will post something, so we use Meetup at the moment as our events management system. When the leaders post up, they give people the opportunity to contact them if they're a first timer. And sometimes it might just be a quick chat with the leader or a quick messenger with the leader. And some of our leaders, like I've done it in the past as well, I'll say, okay, I'll get there half an hour beforehand. And I'll meet you there then. And then we can chat, and then that person they suddenly know someone and they're not trying to share my time at that point when they first arrive. Because there's one of the really important things is if someone has been sitting in a car going, is this for me? Is this not? Should I get out? Should I not? If they do decide to get out, that very first interaction will prove to them whether they've done the right thing or not.
Yes.
So if they get there and everyone's talking amongst themselves and no one knows they've arrived, they already feel on the outer.
Yes.
And at that point in their head, they're like, see, this is what I thought it was going to be. They're not going to like me. I'm not going to fit in. So it's really important that, this is what we tell our leaders and also our participants, that we kind of keep an eye out for new people and welcome them as soon as possible, because that very first interaction can taint the whole, like they might have it might be an amazing hike day, but if they were made to feel on the outer or excluded in any way at the start, that can really taint everything. And it takes a real conscious effort from the leader's perspective, because as you said, like the leaders there, this is easy for them. And most of the participants, they've been doing it for ages, so it's easy for them. And it's just about remembering and having that empathy for that new person. And one of the things that we found really works really well as well is the fact that so all of our beginner hikes are open to new people. But every now and again, probably once a month, I'll flag one of our beginner hikes as a newbie hike. And suddenly all these new people come in, and they're welcome on every hike. But because this one says newbie, they feel a sense of belonging already. And they also know that there'll be other people who are feeling a bit out of their depth as well, which is really important, bonding thing.
Well, speaking of bonding, and thank you, Nina, for the question. Sorry, it's taking me a little while to get to it. Did you find many people bring friends and or family along with them for support, or worrying that they wouldn't know anyone? So do you see them coming in twos like Noah's Ark, or is it more individual?
Yeah. We do see a little bit of that. Sometimes there's been a few scenarios where you might have a pair of sisters, and the more active, more outgoing sister will come along with the less outgoing sister to
Mm-hmm.
basically introduce them. And
Yeah.
generally and it'll work two ways. Both of them will stay and keep returning, or the more active sister will drop away, because basically she's introduced the less active sister and less confident sister. So that's been really good to see. One of the other things too is people will people often will bring their dogs, because that in itself is a security blanket.
Yeah.
And also, if you've got nothing else to talk about, there's always the dog to talk about. There's
Yeah.
always, and the dog is almost your introduction to people.
Yeah.
And we find that we have a lot of people who might feel socially awkward. What to say, don't know what to say to new people, don't know, may not feel comfortable like making small talk with strangers. I think we all get to a point of our lives that we can't be bothered making small talk with strangers. And having the dog there is it means that if they don't want to talk, they've got the company of the dog, but at the same time, it makes for great conversation. The same with sometimes people bring their kids as well, and people are more than welcome to do that. Although we do find that quite quickly, these hikes and adventures become about self-care for the person.
Yes.
And that involves being away from their kids quite often.
Yeah. Absolutely. The social side is again a really strong theme coming through all of the Doing Sport Differently case studies, if you like, and in a number of instances, the activity is secondary to the social connectiveness, which is what you talked about earlier. Is that how you see it? Is it the activity that brings people back repeatedly more than the social, or is it more the social and what's that side of it like?
Yeah, it's interesting. So initially, people will say they're coming for the activity,
Yes.
but they end up with such good relationships and good friends, and people start to feel like they belong.
Yeah.
And that's what they keep returning for. I mean, luckily for us, we also get to go out to some amazing places and see some amazing sights. And I often used to say, back in the days where I worked at Telstra, I got banned from telling anyone about what I'd done on the weekend because it was always something really amazing and epic. And so now these days we talk about you've got something to talk about around the water cooler now. Like when someone says to you, what did you get up to for the weekend? You might not want to say, oh, I watched Netflix or I did a little bit of crafting. It's like, I went and did this really big hill and we saw this waterfall and it was amazing and we camped, or that kind of thing. So so that in itself, and the connectedness, like the lifelong friendships that I've seen as part of this group are phenomenal. I remember there was the first ever leadership training that we did. So one of the things that's also different about us is we, by and large, we source 80% of our leaders from our participants. So our leaders don't come in as being outdoor leaders and experienced in that way. They come up through the ranks. So for our first leadership training session, we had, I think there was 6 of our regulars, plus I think there was a group of 10 of them. But 6 of our regulars who'd been with us for over a year had become such good friends. They had all bought kayaks and they'd all bought kayak racks for their cars, and they parked outside the training centre that we were at, and they were just all lined up, all these cars with kayaks on the roof, because they were all going to go kayaking together after the training session. And these were people who had never been active, never been outdoorsy before this group. They suddenly had their crew to do it with. And that's so exciting. And one of the things that gives me a lot of pride as well is the fact that I will often see that people from the group are going off and doing there are like different adventures together through people that they've met through the group. So, and that for me is so many people seek inclusion and seek a way to feel like they're part of something, and it's so important to offer that.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and it comes down to basic human psychology, doesn't it? Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We want to belong to something, that sense of belonging. So every journey to that point is different for each different group, and you seem to have created a wonderful journey for people to get active in the Great Australian Outdoors, which we're very lucky to have just on our doorstep. Richelle, I could talk to you all day. I think what you've done is amazing. I think it's fantastic, and congratulations on starting something outside of the clubs. It's not within the normal bounds of a sports club. You've started this from scratch and created a group of like-minded people coming together, exercising, experiencing the world, having something cool to talk about around the water cooler. Or I'm big soon to become despise Zoom meetings, but yeah, but more than that, you're creating great social connectiveness. So congratulations on what you've achieved. How can people? What's your website URL? I should have put that up on the screen.
Yeah, all good. So it's escapingyourcomfortzone.com. And yeah, basically all our links to all of our socials and all of our events are in there. Not that there's any events at the moment, but they will be there when they're there.
Yeah, and you get to see what the events will be. But if we just do what we normally do and just finish off just looking at this discussion through the Doing Sport Differently framework that's been created from the research by La Trobe University and Vic Health, it's just a classic. I'm not sure, you've either done it exactly by the framework, or you just illustrate exactly that the framework really works, engaging the target market, working with them, thinking about it from their perspective, catering to different levels. The deliverer is the most vital person, and creating that pathway as people develop their fitness into activities. And you've created it in a sustainable way. I mean, it's the perfect program. And so congratulations. I look forward to seeing where you take it with the benefit of COVID. It gives people like ourselves a bit of time to have a breath, huff and puff, and think about where we take our ideas and our thoughts. And I look forward to seeing where you take Escaping Your Comfort Zone post-COVID.
All right. Thanks so much for your time today, Steve. This has been great.
No, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and your journey. It's I've certainly learned a lot, and I'm sure everyone else that watches the video and was joining us today live stream has learned a lot. Just before we go though, Kim's just come through. Richelle's program is sensational. Well, I've seen her program at work, and the group are so engaging and welcoming, so fulfilling, seeing Escaping Your Comfort Zone exposed for the wonderful networking that it delivers. So Kim, thank you so much for putting that in. What a wonderful way to finish what's been a great discussion, Richelle. Thank you so much for your time.
Cool. Thank you. And thanks, Kim. See ya. Thank you.
And so thanks for where does this week go? It's Wednesday already. It's just bizarre how fast the week goes in lockdown for those that are not in Victoria. The rest of us are in a bit of a lockdown down here in Victoria. Tomorrow, live stream, we'll just do a little bit of a recap on where we're up to. Friday is eSport Friday, so I have no idea what we're talking about and what that conversation is normally about when I'm in it. And then next week, we've got a whole range of great guests, which is really exciting. So as normal, I'd like to say thank you for being part of our sports community.